It's so nice to see a full house tonight. Welcome, everyone. The first item on our agenda is a presentation by Naomi Krim of the Montgomery County Planning Commission regarding the Main Street Corridor text and zoning map amendment. Naomi?
How about now? Okay, yeah. Yes, Peter said, my name is Naomi, I'm a community planner with the Montgomery County Planning Commission, and over the past year I've been working with the Planning Commission here and Mike to create this zoning district for West Main Street. So I'm going to give an overview, hopefully enough information, but not too much so that your eyes glaze over. But feel free to interrupt with any questions. So the zoning district boundary that we're talking about here is West Main Street between Trooper Road and Forest Avenue. So we're talking about all the blue parcels here. And the idea here is to replace the revitalization and traffic management overlay district, the commercial zoning district for these parcels, and the limited commercial district with this new zoning district. So we are repealing the limited commercial zoning district and the overlay. The commercial zoning district will stay because it exists in other pockets throughout the township, like here on Marshall Road and then down on Egypt Road also. So that's the boundary of the zoning district. The intent of the ordinance essentially is to implement the vision that was outlined in the West Main Street Vision Plan from 2019. So we're encouraging mixed-use development. We put in better design standards, so architectural standards, landscaping, pedestrian amenities. So we're requiring sidewalks and verges, which is the area between the sidewalk and the street. We're requiring landscaped areas throughout developments. We're also trying to standardize the corridor to better align with the 2500 block of West Main, so where the Citadel and Wawa are, because they have nice landscaping, wide sidewalks, et cetera. And also some more prescriptive standards than was in the overlay district. So in terms of uses, we're allowing a mix of uses by right. So a variety of retail, restaurants, theaters, offices. We made sure to transfer over the uses from the limited commercial district that are not allowed elsewhere, because that district is being repealed. I'd say the biggest difference in the uses by right are that single-family detached homes will no longer be permitted by right, which they were in the commercial and the limited commercial district. So that's one big change. Residential uses in this district are permitted as part of a mixed-use building, provided that they're located on the second floor or above, because we wanted to have office or retail on the first floor to encourage a more active streetscape. But any single-family dwelling that currently exists is considered to be pre-existing non-conforming, so they are grandfathered in, and they can continue to exist even if the property changes hands. And also the township has regulations regarding non-conforming uses, so the use or structure that is non-conforming can also be expanded with approval from the zoning hearing board. So yeah, if there's questions about that, I can answer those. So those are the by right uses, and then we put in some other uses that just require extra scrutiny and have extra requirements. So those are the conditional uses, so a hotel, a motel, a boutique hotel, which is basically a smaller hotel. That's permitted, and it has additional requirements in terms of frontage along Main Street, setback requirements, buffer requirements, trying to sort of mitigate the impact of that use from adjacent residences. And similar for drive-through windows or facilities. They have additional requirements to buffer that use from neighboring properties. There's also some special exception uses that require approval from the zoning hearing board, including indoor place of amusement or recreation, and then a service station or used car lot. That was taken from the overlay district. And then the prohibited uses are any manufacturing or processing use that's permitted by right in the industrial district. So for dimensional standards, the vision plan had recommended that parcels be grouped into 3 categories of front yard setbacks. As you can see here, the 20-foot setback in green, the 35-foot setback in yellow, and then the 50-foot setback in orange. And the idea is to get most of the buildings closer to the street, to make the street a little bit more walkable and pedestrian-oriented. So the way that we implemented that idea was to regulate this by lot depth. So there's 3 categories of lot depths. Lots that are less than 300 feet, lots that are between 300 and 600, and then lots that are 600 feet or more. And so the rest of the dimensional standards are sort of regulated according to the depth of the lot. So I put this chart in just so you have this for reference, and this is showing, it's comparing the proposed zoning on the right with what is currently existing. I'm not going to go into the details of all of this, but happy to answer questions about it. I think the biggest thing I want to highlight here is the difference in height. So before, the max height of a building was 35 feet, which is about 3 stories. And now the max height is 50 feet by right, so about 4 stories, but you can go up to 65 feet with some bonus standards. Then I just want to highlight some of our process in doing this district. So with some of my colleagues at the county, we went through this design testing process this past summer to verify that the standards made sense for the existing lots. A lot of the lots in this district are very narrow, and so we wanted to make sure that if we're requiring all these things, we can fit it all on the lots as they exist. So we looked at 3 different sites, one from each depth category, and basically people just designed sort of example buildings and tested out, does this work, does it not, what kinds of standards do we need to change, et cetera. The biggest thing we found was just that we were requiring too much parking, which made it really impossible to fit a mixed-use building on some of these sites. So that was something that I changed. So then we have some requirements for the frontage and streetscape. So basically requirements for the front of the lot. So you need a minimum 6-foot sidewalk, 3-foot verge area. So that's shown here and over here. A minimum 5 to 6 foot landscaped area in the front of the lot. And then for the deepest lots, requiring sort of a pedestrian walkway in front of the building. So these are the bonus provisions that we're offering. So basically, if you build a public gathering space larger than what's required, then you can have an extra 15 feet of building height, so that's an extra story, essentially. And then we're also trying to, basically, the idea here is to incentivize larger gathering spaces along the corridor. And then the other thing we're trying to incentivize is reducing the number of curb cuts along West Main Street. So if an applicant grants shared access easements to neighboring properties for parking lots, aisles, and driveways, then they get a reduction in the required parking. So then we have a bunch of different design standards that we put in, basically to ensure a better development product. So this includes requiring facades to face Main Street with pedestrian access and entrances from Main Street. We're hoping that some of the lots get consolidated. So then we have standards for lot occupation if there's more than one building per lot, requiring a certain amount of spacing between the buildings. We have requirements for facade articulation and massing. Basically, this is requiring architectural details so you don't just get sort of a flat block of concrete. What else? There's landscaping standards, so standards for landscaping buffers and green and open space. Standards for public gathering spaces, which we're requiring for buildings that are above a certain size. let's see, standards for outdoor dining, making sure that it's buffered from the street or from parking areas. And then at SEPTA's request, we put in some standards for bus stop infrastructure, so requiring that the developer coordinate with SEPTA regarding the design and location of any bus stops, making sure they're signing a maintenance agreement with the township. So those are some of the design standards. And then we put in some specific parking standards for this district for select uses to help facilitate redevelopment. So these are the parking, these are the reduced standards for these uses, you can see in the chart. And then we have some parking reduction standards as well. So if the developer is able to provide a parking study justifying fewer spaces, that would be an opportunity to lower the parking requirements. Shared parking is permitted. If they're providing bus stop infrastructure, they can get a parking reduction. If they're granting access easements, that's another opportunity. We're also trying to get parking away from the front of the building, again, to activate the streetscape. So only for the deepest lots would parking be allowed in front of the building, and that's just one aisle of parking in front. Yeah, and then we have other requirements for number of curb cuts allowed per property, again, trying to reduce the number of curb cuts along Main, because that's been an issue. So those are the major things I was planning to highlight about this district, but happy to answer any questions as well.
Naomi, could you clarify when changes like this would go into place, like say if a business changes hands or properties are purchased?
So it would only go, I would need to read, again, the township's non-conforming ordinance or regulations, but this would only happen if there were significant redevelopment of the property. So even if a building changes hands, if it's going from a restaurant, it's staying a restaurant, that wouldn't be grounds for it to change. I think it would be like a demolition or something like that is when it would need to come into conformance with the ordinance.
What about things like signs? If a business wants to erect a new sign, that all comes under,
Well, that would be regulated under the sign ordinance, which
Okay,
is a
sorry.
sort of separate
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which
right.
is, the planning commission just updated that ordinance prior
Yeah.
to this one, so we do have a more modern standardized sign ordinance that came, I think, out of the county model prior to your arrival, Naomi. So-
Right, yeah, I think that was in 2021.
Can't think of any other questions.
All right, so the next step for the board, I believe Naomi has worked with our solicitor's office to get a draft ordinance in place. There's gonna be 2 advertisements that are gonna be required as part of this, one for the text amendment with the repealing of the zoning ordinance and the new zoning ordinance, and then also a map amendment because we are gonna be amending the zoning map, so there'll be 2 processes as part of this. Once it is advertised, if we can get that motion for you on Tuesday night, then there will be a public hearing because it is a zoning change, which would occur at the end of the 30-day advertising period as part of that too, so.
So that would the zoning hearing be separate from this?
We would normally do it in the beginning of the, either the work session or the regular meeting. If we would be brazen enough to get this advertised in February, we could do it in March. If not, if we would advertise it in March, we would have it in April, the hearing, so. There's, obviously under the municipal planning code, there's multiple advertisements that have to be done as part of this because it is a zoning change, so. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Are we happy?
All right, thank you, Naomi.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Do you want to do the next thing, or do I do that?
As long as Roseanne wants to do it. Roseanne, do you want to introduce Shannon?
Sherry.
Sorry,
Sherry?
Sherry, sorry.
Yeah, at this time, I'd like to call up Sherry Johnson, who has, would
support me in our community. I appreciate it. I'm here today to talk about a situation that's happening not just in Norristown, also our community here in West Norriton. My name is Sherry Johnson. My husband is Jeff Johnson. I'm a semi-retired personal trainer, and my husband, Jeff, is a semi-retired biochemical engineer. We enjoy skiing, boating, canoeing, and playing golf, and cheering on our Eagles. We have several real eagles that fly over our Schuylkill River every day. But I'm here because last week I rode my bike down the bike path, which I do often, but this time I went towards the homeless camps that I knew were there, and I thought, let me go see what's going on there lately. And instead of riding my bike past the homeless camps and seeing the mess and all these homeless people, I got off my bike. I was compelled to do it because I saw a young woman, sitting in the mud, surrounded by trash, living in a tent. Asplund was working there, so there were lots of people around. So I had a little more courage to get off my bike and approach this lady. And she was very nice. And I said, do you mind if I talk to you? I said, I just want to understand what you're going through. And she said, well, okay, I guess so. And I said, do you mind if I take a video? I said, people need to see what you're going through because we see you, especially when the leaves are covering the encampments. We don't even know they're there. At first she didn't want to, and then I said, because I really like to get you some help. And she said, you know, yes, let's show everybody what's going on here. And she allowed me to make this one video we're going to show. Can we play the video now? Yeah. Hi, sweetheart. What's your name? And how long you've been living here, and you said you're homeless? I'm so sorry. And that's your tent? I guess that's your dog in there? Oh, and what's your situation right now? You don't have food or anything? We don't have food, water, barely eat. And how long have you been in this situation? 7 months. 7 months, and you've been down here at your riverside here. What is it, Hawes Avenue? Yeah. And all this, where did all this come from? It burned? Oh, who burned it, do you know? I mean, you can't live like this. How do you do it? How do you get food and everything? You collect scrap metal?
I usually go to the house and find out if there's food in the dumpster, or somebody brings it to you, but other than that, you bury.
Wow. Where'd that bike come from? That's a nice bike.
That's my own name, that book is.
So your boyfriend, yeah, it was his bike. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right, this video is going to help so that our legislatures, they know what's going on. They need to see this. Thank you so much for that interview. And the flamingos. So yeah, so that's the reality. And I wish I could interview every one of those people. You know, some of our homeless have mental illness. Some of them are addicted to drugs. Some of them are just like you and me, only they have had bad luck. Maybe they can't afford their apartment anymore. They lost their job. The economy is too much for them to handle. We need to